I mean, we could probably get going.
That's,
Probably get going. and-
what's that, 10 o'clock?
Oh, all right. Let's
This is
fast.
bad.
So you
Lots
have
are
your,
fast.
you have your agenda, do you want Doug here for the community? I'm just trying to see if we can
Yeah.
get Rhonda out.
Yeah.
Do you want
I
Doug
thought
here
we
for the
do
community?
Rhonda.
It should be, yeah, that's,
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you want to do Rhonda first.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
With Doug,
With Doug.
yeah.
we need
All right.
to go.
I'll remind
Oh, he knows. He's trying.
remind him. quicker.
Okay.
And these topics we want to go over without Doug, can we do the transfer station without Doug?
Water station or county
Oh, I want to talk about
water,
Terry.
water cert. You got the water
Is
now.
it-
Well, we should, that might take a little bit
Yeah.
too.
So
So,
that's what I
Yeah.
was just gonna say, that, is there any topic in there that isn't going to take a while?
Well, I-
Put it on the agenda, I
Yankees
forgot.
versus the Boston.
well, Greg, you know, Terry saw my email yesterday about the sanitary sewer discussion, like what we should have available
Yeah,
to discuss, and then we probably should set a date to discuss it.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the real next step, is the select the date for the information
Yeah.
meeting, so I can target that, and then I can take the stuff that you put together and then the stuff that I have,
and I saw that you answered his questions, and you.
not all of
just
them, some of them.
Some of them, well, you answered them. Put this out, closer to reality probably than what we've had, so.
Right,
Yeah, we could, then when Doug's gonna be here, we talk about the. We have a. Sarah, when do we have? We have a meeting of the bid. It's what, June 25th
June,
and 6th, and,
uh,
July, you're talking about?
no, June
27th.
27th. And it said we try to do something toward the end of this month, but. We
Yeah,
could
I
better
think
move
it's
it into the
tentatively
first week in July, something like that. The 4th of July is on a Monday,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
so,
So Tuesday's not a good idea.
no.
Maybe the week after. Like the week of the 11th, Terry,
Our town board meeting is
like
following. the
18th, right?
Yeah,
18th. So sometime that week, the week of the 11th, like a Wednesday night. I don't know if there's anything scheduled for that night.
yeah, you do the 13th.
That's good.
13th.
Yeah, 13th would work.
All right, we'll put that in for now. I guess 6:30.
We have that, could be able to use the courtroom for that, I would think. There's no court that night. So.
It's a Wednesday, there's usually not anything in there on
Yeah.
Wednesday nights. There's usually not anything on Wednesday nights, period.
Okay.
As for what? again?
It's a public meeting,
For the
just
sewer.
an informational
Oh,
meeting
yeah,
for,
okay.
So I mean, you want to get mailers out right before the holiday, though, right?
Yeah, we probably want to mail out. And do we have a list of those addresses in our
Yeah,
preliminary map plan report?
well, we don't really have.
I know, but I mean, you
But
know,
I know we did something. And we coordinated, and I think
For
we had done,
this,
I
or
think
for
we
the
had,
other one?
so that was for County Road 28, we asked for, oh no, you're right, it was Cheshire.
Cheshire,
I don't think we do that.
I might be able to pull that.
well, we can always go to Encore or one of our sites and pull that information. Can we just clarify, are we doing both sides of Emerson Road? Between Emerson and 28, Terry, or are we just doing,
Whatever is outlined in
okay.
the original order. And then you-
Right, see my emails. So yeah, okay, they're included, all right. Yep. All right. I'm in there, that's all that matters.
All right.
I vote yes.
Yeah.
You know,
You know.
but the tab is gonna be, what was it, around $2,000?
Fine.
$1,043.53.
That's two
That's
grand.
I'll take it. I know I'm on borrowed time, buddy,
Lit-
so.
You
it's
know,
been a
you just
long
like
time.
Expired on mine.
So,
I don't know, I mean, you just don't, I mean, these numbers, I think, are relatively conservative. But, you know, they might not be depending upon which way inflation keeps going
Right.
and. You know, if it ever takes a downturn, then this, you have some money left
I
over,
know
in which case.
my immediate neighbors were all like, when are you gonna do it?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
even when I tell them the numbers of.
things, the important things to know, what's included in the project budget right now is it includes the $200 lateral fee is in the budget
Mhm.
for every, so it's not like, you know, you'd have to come out of pocket for the
Yeah,
individual
it's
homeowners.
all in.
Yeah, it's all in here.
Mhm.
They would just have, they would be responsible for, like we talked, is the cost to run the lateral to the home.
Right.
And then the decommissioning of their septic tank.
Require decommissioning has to occur or?
It has to occur.
Okay.
Yeah, decommissioning has to occur. Once you're hooked to public sewer, that's, I believe that's in the sewer use law. Our
Okay.
sewer use law basically points either to Farmington or points to Ontario County. So it's spelled out there that the need for,
Filled and closed. Yep.
yeah, they just usually bust off the top, fill with stone.
We'll pump it out. You pump it out.
Yeah, pump it out, yeah.
Well, we tell you, I'm sure some of you like, oh, look, only took half time.
I saw Chris in the parking lot pulling in yesterday, he was going out, where you at? Yeah, some guy's tank exploded over on, I don't know which road.
Not road,
Not
did you
road.
see that?
Tank
No, I didn't see it,
Oh.
because I'm not gonna go.
Oh, God, it's awful out there.
I said,
But
it's
it's tank
exploded.
exploded?
No, septic fields are failing today.
Oh, they blew
To the
out.
point where
Oh, okay.
the effluent is going out to the.
Yeah, so it's
It's
just.
not gray water anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just,
Going out and flowing down to the field.
yeah, it's nasty.
So.
Yeah.
Not there yet. Hopefully I will get there.
No,
So we can, I mean, so when we're putting together the public informational flyer, we can identify some of those one-time costs. So people are kind of aware of those.
Do they have a year to connect or is it?
The county usually wants like 18 months or so to connect. Everyone that's in the district would immediately be responsible for the debt service, but the O and M charge doesn't get charged until you actually make your connection.
okay, all right.
So, but I mean, the county's gonna want as many connections as possible
Mhm.
because you gotta run a pump station. So you're gonna want the O and M money to be able to run that pump station.
Greg, do we still need to determine which manhole we're discharging to, or do we finally hash that?
No,
out?
well, they basically said we needed to tie into the line that's on County Road 28, like
Okay.
down near Goodman.
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think these drawings don't have the force main, but that needs to be revised, in there, and I have to double check, I believe that was revised here. But the guy that was working on my mapping was unavailable for me this week, so, or at least since Thursday.
Yeah.
Questions?
there was question about which side of the road it's gonna be on, I says, I don't know. I just-
Yeah.
That's just one thing I forgot to add to my,
When we throw this stuff, you know, I've got these drawings here that, and they're kind of schematic, so you can kind of see, this is the level of where we're at right now. I mean, it's not really biased on the road, it's really just, you're just running a profile on the road for the most part. We'll have to go ahead and resolve some of the utilities and some of the other conflicts to tell where we're gonna go. Ideally, we want to try to stay on one side of the road, because every time we cross County Road 28, it's gonna be some money.
and then, do we have to place a pump station somewhere in the Risser Road area?
Yeah, I think the low area is right here, somewhere down with this area.
All right,
You can see this on the profile.
and then from there, we're pushing it back,
Yeah, everything's running down this way and tying it.
now is that gonna be a force main all the way to there? Or
Well,
is
yeah,
it-
it'll have to be a force main from here to where our discharge point is, which is, I wanna say it's a little bit further south of us.
And then, where, is there any gravity, or are we all available tied to the force main?
We have gravity running from, just south of Parkside, north. all the way to our pump station. So everything kind of,
Down and up.
Okay.
this is like a knoll here and this is kind of a
Yeah.
rise here, so everything kind of falls here. So it'll all collect here and then we'll pump it that way.
Okay.
There is potential depending upon how we want to look at it for, if you wanted to add in some ancillary parcels.
There's another chair.
If they could potentially tie in with like an E1 or something like that. I know the county doesn't really want to see like the whole district, but I think if there's a parcel here or there, that could probably be accommodated.
I'd be smart about those,
This run.
that one there, and Mrs. Roby. I know they're not in what we drawn, but. Good.
Yeah, we would just need to make that decision that that's the way we want to proceed.
Yeah.
So we can make sure we count it when we actually, when we actually do seekers, something like that, we'll want to make sure we identify all of our impacts
Okay.
and how they impact the residents.
The green forest.
This is all falling off this
Oh,
way.
okay.
Yeah,
This is all
I mean,
falling, you're falling downhill that way, you're falling downhill that way.
So if you pick these up, the one that way.
well, depending on that manhole depth too, I mean, maybe it can, I don't know.
I think you're running out of grade here, that last manhole.
Okay,
You're bucking grade anyways from, from really this manhole. It's falling this way, so.
okay,
But like I said, you might be able to extend this with like a small diameter, low pressure sewer type thing for
when
at
we
least a few of those spots.
design that corner, we should probably also coordinate, obviously we're going to the county, but, I can see a roundabout there in
This
the
one
future,
here,
yeah, so. We should probably just have that conversation with Tim. Okay,
Guarantee, just 2 feet under the first floor, or you don't guarantee, basement, right? If somebody has a facilities in the basement.
we have to give them a lateral that's a minimum of 4.5 foot deep.
4.5 feet, so if they've got basement.
So we gotta be below frost. So if we catch their basement because the sewer's deeper, then great,
Yep.
but if not, then
right,
Okay.
Does it come from the back of the house and they may not be able to get all the way around it, so we have to go fix things and
Okay, so you can cut off the old lateral to the septic system and throughout the front.
correct. Yeah.
yeah, we've
That's on them.
That's, that's something that's happening on almost all these, when you're sewering an area that already has.
Look, down tables, we can talk with the.
There's a lot of nuances in each individual home as to how they connect.
When she house, it's like 3 but
If,
tell them 4.5 feet, that's.
if money's no object, you can put the pump station, 500 feet deep and, we can drain everything.
That'd be a hell of a
It'll all
pump
go through
station.
there.
Need a multiple stage pump station.
The entire county goes.
That's right.
I think you can forget that.
I think you're right.
How many minutes is this?
It's about 100. And like I said, depending upon how many additional lots we try to serve, with maybe a less conventional style. And provided the county agrees, you could add in a few more units here and there.
Well, I often work, right, in my house, my neighbor's house is a vacant lot. Al's pump station could go there, it might be easier to than deal with a house that's already got. Property with a house in front versus having, the pump station with no house in front, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's stuff that, like, when we get actually into a preliminary design phase and working through the PER, we'll take something like that into consideration at that point in time.
A little farther for the force main, but
Mhm.
might be easier to obtain what we need to get the project done.
Right. Yeah, if your land acquisition is quite a bit cheaper, you can pay for a little bit of force main.
Right.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Could this eventually link into the uptown area?
Well, so those are some of the things that like Doug has kind of talked about, is if there's any way we can somehow have uptown kind of help this district. So it just gets a little sticky with subdivisions, because usually subdivisions pay for their own stuff. You know, that there are some mechanisms for like access facilities. So if we had to build like a larger force main because of it, I don't think a lot of uptown would really drain to this particular
That's what I
area.
was wondering.
So,
I think it's kind of breaking the wrong way,
Uphill.
so we would have to like jump over, you know, a
I'm just
ridge.
looking for ways we can reduce, increase the units and reduce the cost,
Mhm.
that's, I don't know how to do that.
Well, uptown's gonna take many years also, so.
Yeah.
This is, the area that we've targeted to use the ARPA money that we've got. And, we struck out on the first two, so this one will be the whole, the intent, with you, the whole sum there, but you gotta find out what the sentiment is, really. The people that attended our last meeting were favorable. but they only got three.
We looked at other options, but the thing is, we need to kind of move forward.
Yeah.
We gotta be able to quantify and wrap our hands around a piece and move it forward, and we can't be
So-
counting too much on the future.
So the one thing I would say is at least worth the town to consider is, you know, maybe we just put an IUP listing for this project and throw it to CWS route and see what comes out, because there's the bipartisan infrastructure law, so that money is available. I don't know what it entails, how it's gonna come, you know, I can't speak to it, but there's a checkbox now on the SRF listing for it. So we wouldn't be able to submit it for the annual list, but we would be able to submit it to the multi-year, because we don't have a preliminary engineer report yet. So as soon as we have that, then we could move ourselves to the annual list, but at least you put you in the queue, kind of see about where you might score, at least a preliminary score. And then we go from there.
So the only thing I just want to jump in here for a quick second on this, you guys, is Shauna and I met with Edgemere Development yesterday. They have sketch plans they're bringing in for the 48 units on Parkside Drive that tie into that flat line. They're ready to go. And I mentioned this yesterday. They don't like the idea of being saddled with having to fix that sewer line that's flat.
Mhm.
And so I still think there's an opportunity to maybe, since they're ready to go, maybe tying in those 48 units as part of a new district.
So that helps. We've got to really gauge some of the people first.
Right.
Before you got here, we talked about scheduling a public information meeting on July 13th. It's a Wednesday in July. Then the June got some other things going on, so. Then the 4th of July, the following week, so. Apparently there's nothing else scheduled that night, so we could send out the notice to people in that potential district area.
Would we have numbers by then?
And we got numbers now.
Oh.
So
And, you know, they're kind of, they're not exact. I mean, they're, as Greg said, conservative. So they have something to present. Jim had posed a series of questions to Greg, most of which were answered. Here,
Right.
there are a few others that need answered by then. We'll have it all together. And we could publish that information and do the same thing we did with people from Cheshire. A month or so, 2 months ago, whatever it was.
There are usual questions that people typically ask. We just put it in, have an answer, so they ask.
Yeah, the number one is what's going to cost.
Yeah, well, exactly.
If those units on Parkside Drive were added to the district, how much would that impact the cost?
I'd have to run the numbers, but I mean, it has to be. So you have to make sure that the people that are in the subdivision, those units are paying for their proportionate benefit and not, you know, the benefit to people on Route 28. But I mean, obviously, if we can put them in the district and we can redo the flat section of the sewer on Parkside, by the way, it's only 0.3%, not 0.4%, so it's not really that big of a deal, but whatever. That flat section on Parkside, if we fix that, and then we can run a shorter force main, then there's clearly a benefit to the County Road 20 sewer district.
I told the Edgemere guys to call you.
Okay,
So
yeah, no, let's definitely kind of talk about it, but at least for when we talk to the public, we can talk about what we know.
right, correct.
And then we basically say, if we could find a way to make this even bigger, include more hands, so to speak, then make the it costs a little bit less.
Right, can you send me your numbers of what you got?
Yeah, I did send an email down to, I think to you yet, you guys, right? So, yeah, if you guys want to forward it along. Perfect.
We just got it. So.
Okay.
You might want to invite whoever to this.
The informational page,
Yeah.
true.
Make sure they have a.
Is this gonna be
Picture.
kind of like for Cheshire, like we do some sort of a, a flyer with information about the meeting itself, why they should come, and then attach the numbers like we did in the past, and then we
Yeah.
mail it to everybody in the proposed district.
Yeah, I don't know if you send this whole thing.
No,
Right,
I don't
from
know,
the
well, I think actually it was
pieces,
like
yeah.
a letter
Yeah.
from Doug that,
Let me put together the public informational handout of what we're gonna hand out on that day, and then you might be able to use that to like harvest information for your letter.
are we sending the letter,
Yes.
or whatever, sending it out? Can you provide us with addresses, like you did?
Yeah, I made a note here to go ahead and pull a property list. Sorry, property address list.
Okay, anything else on this or? We'll move into the CCA discussion. Everybody here. And then you can escape.
Whatever you guys need, it's just fine.
You're up.
Okay, so this, I know some of this group, this is my first committee meeting, but some of this group obviously has been involved in these discussions from the beginning of how I was looped in with Sarah and Doug. So we are at the space where we would like to put out an RFP for this third-party administrator. So that's kind of the process that NYSERDA had explained to us in the beginning of what's needed here. So it's gone through the town board and been very supportive. So now our next piece is, I know Sarah had sent around the draft of what we put together from the template that NYSERDA had given us. And there's just the logistical questions of when do we want to send this out? And then when do we want the submissions to come back? It really seems that there are obviously 4 to 5 companies within the region that are very used to this. So NYSERDA was saying really 4 weeks max to put this out. You really could do it in 2 weeks because it's obviously very easy for these companies to get this information back to us. So if it makes sense to this committee to decide 2 to 4 weeks of how long you want the RFP out there.
Well, but New York contract reporter that we post all of ours on requires a minimum of 23 days or 24 days or something. or
Yep.
other.
Awesome. That was one of my questions about contract reporter for you
I
guys.
have a
'cause
note
we're-
on there too,
not-
about contract reporter.
Because we're no longer as consultants able to post that for our clients, which is a bummer, but that's where we are, so that's great,
We do it with the
Okay.
RFP, our town clerk.
perfect. I assumed it was business as usual, but I wanted to ask those questions. And then there were suggestions as we were going through kind of the templates of how these programs were. Some people do interviews, some people don't do interviews. It would be my suggestion that we do have interviews, if that's okay. They seem to be, not too hard of a lift by any means, but I think really engaging with these folks in person, or if technology is easier for this committee, great, I'm happy to kind of shepherd that through and schedule them and do all the logistics, but we kind of, Sarah and I really went into some detailed questions that she had received from this committee in the very beginning process that we would like to ask, and then we know with other neighborhoods not too far from us here had some questions as they went through the process, so we would like to ask those in interviews to make sure that we have the right source for
I
us.
think interview's a good idea about how many people would you seek to do that process,
I mean,
just see who comes up.
right, so if it's kind of seeming to be the 3 to 4 local companies, then we could either look at the RFPs as they come in and decide that, or, I mean, I would imagine we could narrow it down to the top 2 of what they have to offer through the RFP process, just to really kind of make sure that they are in tune with the town of Canandaigua and what our needs would be.
Yeah, I think if you can narrow it down, you know how many are gonna get it, but if we can narrow it down to the top 2 or 3 and then interview those.
I think that makes sense, definitely. So with all the fun things that the town has going on, do you have any ideas of when you would want to initiate sending out the RFP, knowing that contract reporter, the 28 days is in there, and then, you know, kind of turning that schedule around?
I mean, once everybody's in agreement with the language in the RFP, after that, you know, get it out quickly, but I don't know about timeline. Just a note on language in the RFP, I did reach out to Rob Richardson, who worked with the city when they did theirs, to ask what their RFP looked like. They didn't change anything. They used the standard language. He said they got 3 responses with that. So I didn't know if people were in the habit of changing the RFP or
Sounds like not.
tolerating it. They weren't.
What about that last page of our standard that has all the different things that we normally
We
include?
probably, yeah, we probably could tag that on. Some of that's in this one, some similar language.
That basically gives the town board the right to reject any and all bids, to not accept anything, and also spells out the MWD component if there is any, and there's a whole variety of different things, our standard boilerplate language.
yeah. So they've got like kind of a standard one right here, that's paragraph, but we probably, I mean, does NYSERDA doesn't have rules about that, right? This is our RFP.
Right, correct.
Okay. So yeah, we probably could just add that on at the bottom. We have our own internal contract that we require people to sign to, so sometimes we put that at the end. of it.
Is there any urgency in the energy market to move this thing faster than?
So the whole process of really educating the community, best practices has been 12 to 18 months to really make sure that everybody's on board. Nobody's surprised, even though we put it out in 8 different ways and 8 different vehicles and all the fun things that we know about public engagement. So when you talk about urgency, we already, from the point of hiring or appointing a third-party administrator, have a year plus of just engagement. And then what I've heard recently from NYSERDA is, you're absolutely right, there's no hurry right now wanting to lock in the current energy rates. And in this process, it's not unheard of to go out to the energy market through this third party more than once to try to get the best rate. So it is a committed, lengthy process. So I just put that out there to say it's great to get started because we know there will be a significant, timeline of work still ahead of us.
Do we have any unofficial feedback from residents' interest in this program?
Well, what's different about this is the residents don't get to decide that. The town is opting everybody in.
Yeah, I
unless they
just
opt
wondered if
out.
we've heard interest.
I've had
Some-
three people that were
some very
supportive of
limited.
it that reached out to me.
Yeah, we have one communication.
Mainly people who really understand what it is are supportive of it. People who have no understanding of it, I think will probably not
I
be.
think that's the thing. And then the first, and nobody's really gonna probably provide much feedback until when they get their first bill, and they're gonna say, what's this? What does the town do?
If it's lower, they may not sell it.
Right, right. If it's higher though, oh,
They will.
As we know.
That's what happened to the city, right?
Yes.
Does the town board have to approve the release of this RFP?
I almost feel like that. We'd have to check that last resolution. I almost think that the town board already authorized us to move forward
I
with
think
this.
it was
Yeah.
insane. I think it was.
That would impact the timing.
The only thing is, we should put in there our standard thing about questions and all that stuff, and then post that on the
That's
website and all that
In
stuff.
there, I think all.
We have a section on our website for RFPs where you can see the current RFPs and the questions and answers and responses and all that stuff.
If it's not in that last reso, we could probably just do a reso for Monday. That, it's not on the agenda, that's just confirming the RFP. It's not a great big new topic, but
I actually don't have anything in here about questions and question deadlines. So we would Or we just on the first
So
page.
we had highlighted it for the deadline in writing to get back questions, so under section 5, you know, we've said all questions must be submitted in writing no later than, and then that would be dictated by the date that we put it out.
Yeah, we'd have to check the wording, but I thought basically the board gave the nod to move forward.
Oh, yes, I see, there's a spot for that.
So if we release it, what do you think, even in the next week or two? You're essentially the middle of July at that point for the responses, so then you could do interviews the end of July, essentially.
Who did the city lined up with for?
Maybe Rochester City,
Mhm.
is that right?
Yep.
Do they do, have you experience with them, that they do a lot of municipalities, or what's their?
Yeah, and then we definitely spelled out in the RFP that we wanted those examples and specifics of which communities they've worked
Yeah.
with. But yeah, they have been around locally probably the longest out of the research that I was given. And and they're also very familiar, obviously, with this direct area, so.
Um,
No.
Does this committee have to make a motion to approve the RFP so that we can move forward, or is it more loose than?
As long as the town board, I want to double check that resolution.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was, because we were talking about Rock City and who used for the RFP in the town work. So.
Worst comes to worst, just have a committee make a recommendation.
Yeah. Anybody opposed to it?
No.
Carrie.
It's a little looser than that. I think the answer to your question.
We tried to short circuit.
He's making an RFP out the door pretty quick, once it's.
Okay. Other questions? You're free.
Okay, well, thank you, and I'll be in touch, and if you guys have any questions that maybe you didn't think of yet, just let me know. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for coming in.
Oh, yeah, of course, my pleasure.
Greg said you can go right home, you go back to the office.
Oh, man, so he's already canceled my other meetings?
You have to stop and buy some ice cream or something from a town of Penn.
Right. Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. All right, you guys have a good day.
All right,
Thanks.
you too.
Thank you.
What do we want to jump in next?
Who's next on the agenda? I didn't put my.
Do you want to do, I mean, you can transfer or you can do water. Which one do
Let's
you-
do the water.
All right.
That's too bad.
There's a water guy.
Weekend doesn't start.
That's all right, so we can jump into the Uptown study. Obviously Derek's here. Derek is obviously hit the most of the, if not all the legwork on the modeling. And, we have to go through at least the conclusions. And then I guess the real question is, do you guys have any questions, and where do we go from here?
Let Derek stall, put in our 2 cents.
Alright, where's the 32?
What kind of? Do a couple of them first. So. says, the uptown area. I look at the world as one big. So this is big picture. This is the service area for the city of Canandaigua.
City.
Oh, city.
This is,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this boundary here is the area that they're allowed to serve underneath a water supply permit. All the red pipes are the area that get water from the water treatment plant. The uptown area, even though it's shown in blue, it gets the water from the water plant. The water plant produces down here, flows through. So the uptown area is effectively a link between the city water supply and Farmington, town of Manchester. Small amount of 4 pipes in the ground. It's, to me, it's key to understand that, because any flow that's coming from here going through this area, it goes through the uptown area. Any improvements, any change made to the distribution system within the uptown area affects anything going north, anything within its service area. Town has multiple water districts. This is really part of the Canandaigua Farmington Water District. Canandaigua Consolidated really covers everything outside of the city now. This area still is now Canandaigua Consolidated, was the former Canandaigua Farmington Water District that served all the way down to Canandaigua, sorry, that served down to Gorham. What's interesting with this area too is that within the modeling, you see that any kind of impacts that goes on here actually can be seen down in this area. Huge demands and so forth. The city itself sees those kind of impacts. So that's kind of big picture. Overall area. Go back to a drawing from a few years ago, and this is 2015. Master plan done for the Canandaigua Farmington Water District. Zooms in a little closer, it gives you an idea of here's the city, this is really the uptown area, the little black lines on it define pressure zones within the system. Anything south really of Canandaigua Farmington Town Line Road rides off of the pressure provided by the city reservoirs at the water treatment plant. The existing Brickyard Road tank is in the middle of this area, and that tank is locked out of the system, meaning that the water, the effective water level in the area is up here, the top of the tank is down below. So it can't fill, it doesn't contribute to the system, it just sits there unless there's a huge demand, and we have seen that over the past 2.5 years worth of real-time data. I guess that has come online, half dozen times. So first of all, so focusing in on the uptown area, that's 232.
Thanks. I gotta figure out where.
Yeah, so 332 uptown areas, again, supplied out of the city of Canandaigua. There are 3 primary water meters that serve the area. Brickyard, this one's over by Town Hall, this one's over by Tim Hortons. And what I'm showing on here is the existing service areas. It does have future services areas on it, and has components of the Brickyard Road tank project. As part of the study, I got information on the amount of water that's really produced by the city of Canandaigua, where they sell it to through all of their master meters, and then also information on a way to estimate water that's served through to Farmington on the other side based on annual water quality reports to try to nail down what's being used right now in this area. And then there's a map that showed the development areas that are likely within the uptown areas, and all the various pipes here include those developments to those demands. Back in May, we put data loggers throughout the entire system to see how system pressures change throughout the day and then throughout the week, to kind of get an idea of how things go on. We did hydrogen flow testing at several locations to get an idea of the performance of the pipes, whether or not there was strict flow. pipes are in poor condition. Been multiple far flows in the area. The results of those, they pretty well came in with what you would expect for far flows in the area. It's typically in the 12 to 1,300 gallons per minute at each location. We do know of several pipes in the system that are old, needing replacement. But because of the size of the system and some of the interconnections on it, they don't seem to have huge impact. Flows, with the exception of maybe up in this area, because it's old 10-inch pipes and pretty good. So the colors are a markup of, when I looked at it, I didn't look at just the developments that were on.
Yeah, that was the anticipated development in the uptown area, all those different projects.
Build out.
Yeah,
So these are all projects that have been identified at some point within the town, and maybe looking at on the books and so forth. But over the years, I've been doing really water system modeling for the town, for the city, for probably 20-25 years at this point. And within the model, there are several areas of other development that have been looked at one point. Similar subdivisions, water district improvements, not only within uptown area, but also as well in the Farmington. I don't have much about Manchester or other areas, but those two areas are quite a bit of information on. And so some of the things that's on here are dealing with some districts, improvements that were identified before. The highlighted areas, this particular pipe here is part of that Brickyard Road tank project, the transmission line. So you can fill a tank and then supply water to the north. This area here, get a little more detail on that later on. That's like a long-term possible improvement for the service area. This water main replacement project here is something that's in, it's like within the 5-year capital plan for the Canandaigua Farmington Water District. On water main North Road. Same thing with water main replacement.
5-year part.
Kind of rebate. Is that also? So those are areas that they've identified a need to replace water main due to age, condition of the pipe. Maybe areas where they had several water main breaks. And again, the 10-inch pipe that runs down here, this pipe is in really bad condition. So it's something that needs to get replaced regardless. It does turn out that this is 10-inch and also 10-inch coming from about here. Now, as I was going through looking at the development in the system, I got to look at it at, how's it going to perform now? What's it doing in the future? And one of the things that we have to our advantage is that we've had, the township, Canandaigua Farmington's had a pressure transducer at the base of their tank to see what's going on in the system. It's been there for almost 3 years now. As you look at it, you can actually see the impacts of development now, because there's a kind of a very gradual, slow drop in pressure in the hydraulic rate tank. It's not huge, it's something that you got to look at it close to see what's going on, but you do see that there is a trend going on in that direction. So as I went through and put in all these developments together, I take a look at it and say, well, how is the system going to perform under existing conditions? How's it going to perform with the developments? Under existing conditions, some things that you don't realize as you're going around town is that over here on North Road, North Street.
Yes.
This is actually one of the higher points within the town. And it's actually higher than the base elevation of Brickyard. Not by much, probably 25 feet. It's enough that as you draw demands within the system, we'll do all the power flow testing out here, you see the pressures in this area drop down, and they wind up from a planning perspective of controlling what's referred to as the design fire flow. From the health department standpoint, you can't take a demand from the system that makes the system drop below 20 PSI at any point within that distribution system. So this area tends to control it. There's also another area over on it's on, Emerson, Thomas.
Yeah.
It's also, sorry, this is right in this area here. This area is actually fairly high too, and this was close to the same ground elevation. So there's it's a topographic map in the background, which of course you can't see, but there's kind of like a high ridge that's within this area. So these points wind up controlling the amount of flow that's available from the system. Again, that's flow you can draw at 20 PSI.
Do we have a feel what capacity the water treatment plants operate at, of their
Yeah.
potential?
Yeah, there's I think there is a summary table in the report for their production. So the biggest thing to take away from that one is that last summer, their monthly average is around 4.55 MGD. Their permitted capacity is 6 MGD.
Right.
They have an odd water supply permit. So they're one of the few that have like a monthly average water supply permit with a max day of 9 MGD. Typically your taking permit it's pretty much, it's a hard number. If someone gives you a 1.5 MGD you can't take more than 1.5. For whatever reason, the city has a little bit of a flexibility. I think that goes back to some of the studies that were done for the city water plan, then through that last water supply permit update with Tony Malone and Peter Lent and Lou Lloyd working those details out to give them the ability to produce more in one day as a kind of a makeup. So you're getting close to the limits. If you're from the city side, you're looking at 4.55 MGD, and your limit is 6. They're going to want to have some amount of reserve capacity for their own growth development. And I think that's ultimately jumping ahead to the conclusions. That's one of the conclusions of the report, is that there needs to be some study on the allocation of water for the service area, the current service area, and then how do we meet future demands? So,
If your study says that there could be 1 million gallons needed,
Right.
to build out of this uptown area and other considerations, would put you 5.5 to 6.
right.
You're right at that average.
Yeah.
With an occasional excursion to 9, probably not maybe a day or two, but you gotta keep that 6 as an average for the monthly
Right.
draw.
So one of the things when I was looking at the data is, they have an average. Call it 2.8. Is the average out there. When you look at their production data though, it's not a normal distribution. They have several days with a lot of production that's way above the average. And then the amount that's below the average, it's not as many, but it's enough to kind of skew it.
Should be.
It's very seasonal too.
Oh, yeah, you see it, but when they start taking more water, it really big impact on the amount of water they have at the plant.
June, July, August.
Through July. There were several days over 6.2, 6.4.
Do we know anything about it? The city is doing a study, but is that related more to their distribution system or to,
The
does
study.
it include?
So talking with Verkler, what they're currently performing is a rate study. As part of his rate study, he's basically put out a flyer to the community, say, hey, what's your future demands? So according to Peter, he really hasn't gotten, great information back from much of the community. So he's like, I'm not really getting, I think, what I really wanted to see, but that's what that study's really focused on. It's more of a rate study and less, any type of allocation study. So I've had a number of conversations with Peter about
I think what might be more helpful for what we're talking about in terms of overall is the county is gonna be releasing the RFP for the affordable housing piece, which also includes the water and infrastructure analysis for it. They haven't even released the RFP yet, so they're still a ways away from that. But I know that I was just had a conversation this morning with city representative who said that they heard me mention a comment about Monroe County Water Authority, and I said, well, my question was, should there be a broader look of coming down 96 with additional water to, because of this overall problem, that should be factored into the overall analysis. It's not that the town was breaking away from the city in terms of Monroe County
Right,
water.
Right, yeah, we're not shopping our water supply.
Right.
We'll shop our fire service. No, and honestly, Doug, that's exactly what I kind of, because Peter was emailing me and I was like, what's this allocation study really gonna do for me? And I was, I kind of outlined, I was like, look, you serve multiple communities and you're starting to push up against your limit. There's a lot of questions, will the DEC allow you to increase your capacity or your withdrawal rate, rate? Is there a need to look at alternative sources of supply? It could be from Wayne County sewer and water. It could be from potentially Seneca County. It could be from Monroe County, whatever it may be. But the whole point is, because this impacts more than just the city, we need to have a plan assembled that looks at, water service 20 years down the road and have community buy-in, right? So, because does Manchester switch to Newark water? Who knows? I don't know. Like there's any number of solutions or ways to kind of, but everybody has to kind of buy into it. And then because these policies don't just happen overnight, like you really need to kind of lay out that plan and then follow steps to achieve some sort of balance between how much we can take and how much we can supply.
You mentioned we're talking to Pete, right? What?
Everybody is kind of too.
Okay.
You got me. It's good. It's on page 200.
That'll be a surprise in a few months.
That conversation with them, but there's, city has contracted with some engineering group to look at, but is it just a distribution? Begins with an R, I can't remember the name, I never heard of it before.
Yeah, but that's the group that's really, they're just looking at how much they should be charging. It's more based on the financials than it is.
They're not looking
right?
at infrastructure at all. Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe they are, because that was part of my other recommendation to Peter, because the water plants, it's pretty old now. And there's definitely some enhancements that would help. There's other underlying problems with the water supply. Everyone's running into THM problems, Farmington's and having problems. You guys have problems with THM. Manchester has problems with THM. So trihalomethanes. So it's talking about disinfectant byproducts. So this is basically when you introduce chlorine, organic material, it creates stuff that's not good for you. And it happens over time. So the older the water is, the more problems you have, or the higher the organics that are still in the water, presence of chlorine, the more disinfectant byproducts you get. So anyways, so in talking about those, with Peter, I was told him there's a need for like a comprehensive study of the water plant itself. You could tie that in with an allocation study, whatever, but there's more work to do there than I think what everyone's thinking just yet.
So Derek, in your analysis, you've included at least our bigger projects that we know of in Uptown Landing,
Yes.
the driving range parcel, the Myers thing,
Yeah,
all
this
over
one,
by the airport,
this one here. is
Center
the
Home,
one that's,
Custos.
Do you have the map, or do you have that map that Lance sent down? With the development areas or whatever, that they had all the parcels on it? That's okay, no worries.
there's a
That's what we,
check
that's
it,
what we,
just-
yeah, that's what we used for this, so
Okay.
we can send you that again. And
Okay.
that's just something that was
We've
missed.
got everything.
Yeah,
So where you came up with 1 million gallons.
yeah, it was based off of all the different units And I think even Doug had sent some estimated usage for some of the non.
We talked about the industrial areas that with
You have it in there.
potential consumption, so it's.
I just want to make sure we have most of it.
Because the one that is the biggest by far.
If the project
Up,
comes,
down, and then-
No, no, this is proposed development. Here, some kind of a commercial
Oh, well, that
development.
was Project Kent, but I don't think that it's gonna happen, but it's so funny, I just had 2 calls yesterday about that property for large industrial use, but that's to be determined, that's, who knows. I think though, since the time we originally put together that list, we now have the actual concept plans for Uptown Landing, which is probably the largest of any of the developments to come to Uptown, so.
Yeah, the specific lattice of network that's there doesn't necessarily matter as much in the model because we're applying a load based off of
Right.
EDUs. So as long as the EDUs are basically relatively the same within, 10% or whatever, it's not really gonna skew our results in any way, shape, or form.
if we leave that large project in there, because who knows?
Right.
We'll be covering our bases.
That was actually one of the demands that when Derek was going through a lot of this stuff, he kind of comes over to my office and he asks me, he's like, so how possible is this really gonna happen?
It's like a 400 gallons per minute.
Right.
Takes the capacity of the demand. That has a significant impact for within this area. Kind of getting back to the pressures, under existing conditions now, the system most of the time, with the exception of Wednesday at 9:30, 10:05,
We don't know why.
the system meets pressure demands. When you start getting into the time period when these fire pumps are being tested, there are portions, these high portions of the system that start dropping below 35 PSI. And again, 35 PSI is a health department requirement for minimum working pressure in the system. for Things and because of the way the fire pumps are tested, that's considered normal operation of the system. A test for almost half an hour. So these areas technically don't meet the minimum 35. As the development gets, more and more into the area, the pressures in these areas obviously start going down further. All the loss through the system getting up to this point, at least that demand is taken fairly close to the common line, but it does affect everything going north. One thing I mentioned in the report is back in 2015, when we even started looking at this, we put a data logger right across the street. It just happened to hit it on the day that they do this one test once a year, and usually Saturday morning, where they open up the fire pump that's located here, they open up the fire pump that draws off here. They open up the gravity feed line that fills a fire storage tank, they turn on that fire pump. They turn on the fire pump to draw off of the pond, and then they open up absolutely every hydrant and fire fixture within the facility and let it run. In 2015, when I caught it, it dropped the pressure here to 15 PSI. And when I put that in the model, that was in the neighborhood of like 6,000 gallons per minute demand. And you saw that go all the way through north into North Farmington, reducing the hydroelectric system. Since then, this thing's been online, several years. I do know that they have been doing that significant test. Something has changed, doesn't seem to have as much of an impact, but still does drop it into the 20 PSI range at times. So part of looking at is what's the impact with just the system as it is right now, as development comes on, we have areas within the system that the working pressures itself started getting farther and farther below the guidelines for minimum system pressures and for maximum day demands. And then it gets, aggravated when the sort of testing goes on. And I also took a look at it of, well, with the Brickyard Road Tape project, what that goes on, that actually helps expectedly. It keeps the pressures more stabilized in the area. It doesn't drop it down below 35, it tends to stick more in the 40 PSI range. maximum demands during the testing that they see out here. We have talked to them on how they do the test, just to make sure that it's being run as a fire. It's done as a part of the risk assessment for the facility. And the rate of the test is limited to the capacity of the pumps. We wanted to make sure that if we put in a system that is more robust, higher pressures in the system, that someone doesn't get the bright idea of, oh, we need more flow, let's put in bigger pumps and draw the pressures down to what it was before.
Right.
You know, as far as we know right now, it stays with the existing pumps that they have. They'll see changes in flows, but it's not going to have the impact on the overall system that we had before. Some other really long-term 50-year build out, say, oh, everything goes on here, even this development here came in. Be as originally considered, something else that has similar kind of demand on it. That everything's done year 2050. There is a time period that this is, you know, Greg mentioned THMs in the system. One of the things within this tank, we want to make sure it's mixed. There's a THM removal system on it. It's set up using check valves and kind of piping so that the water comes in, flows into the tank, flows north, and flows into the town of Farmington area. It is kind of the preferred path through the tank. Keep the tank turn over and keep it fresh. There are other valves within the system that they're just simple check valves that during maximum day demands, it'll start drawing off the tank, feeding back into the system itself. What I do find in the long run is that these 10-inch pipes that feed to this point, they start becoming a restriction for the supply to the tank. So the tank level starts getting lower and lower and lower, kind of the point where it's maybe operating halfway full, quarter full as demands go on. That's something that can be alleviated by changing the pipe size to fill it up, modifying how the check valves work for the preference to go north to limit the amount of flow that goes through that. Because it's a tank, its level is really just a function of the rate in going to the rate out. Either increase the amount going into the tank to maintain its level or reduce the rate of flow going out. This increases the flow going in. If you take the check valve out, so if more floats on the system, then it reduces the flow going out, so it maintains a more reasonable level in the tank. Some of the things to keep in mind that this is really a gravity fed system. It's not being pumped from the water treatment plant. So the flow rates coming into this area are really tied into how high the water level is maintained at the city's reservoirs. So the higher the reservoirs, the greater the flow capacity is into the supply area. Their change in elevation is 20-25 feet sometimes in the summertime. They have gotten tank levels that are low, below 10 feet in their reservoirs. If you're thinking about it 10, 15 feet, 20 feet, it doesn't sound like much, but it's enough that changes how much flow is there and changes how much water is within this tank. So
Just to give a perspective of that, when we had West Street. Okay, when the reservoirs at the city of Kennebunk, we get down to say halfway, when we would lose, say, 4 or 5 pounds of incoming pressure, we probably lose about 200 gallons a minute out of the system. Just those 4 or 5 pounds would change that much from just us pumping out West Street. So, you take that across the board, when their reservoirs get lower, it does reduce the ability to have that same pressure going to the north.
So the elevation of our tank, as you can figure, is that if the city grade is lower by 20 feet, we're at 160 feet, then that impacts our hydraulic grade at the location of the tank by the same amount. So
Well, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned there's 3 points where they're all relatively the same as the current tank. One there, one there. So say 0.1 closest to you, 0.2 in the middle, and then 0.3 where the current tank is, right? And then you've got the restriction of those pipes going into 0.3. 0.2, and we have landlocked issues essentially and limitations on 0.3. does it make any sense to look at the new tank either going to 0.1 or 0.2, maybe 0.2? We have a lot more flexibility.
Well, having the tank out here, so your demand is in this area.
Mhm.
Having the tank on this side
Mhm.
during the maximum demands, fire demands, now you have the ability for this tank and this tank to feed
Okay.
to the center area. Whereas if you move it farther this way, any demand that's north of the tank
It's all.
is all on the tank, and it winds up dropping off the grade that you have out here.
Okay.
You may actually see pressures in this area if you move the tank too far this way. They're less than what you have in our area.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
But yeah, no good question.
So the report has its information almost to the point where like, okay, we know that this has to be done this in this area, but there's also the future known of, we gotta speak about how to get water north.
Yeah.
And I don't mean by what we're looking at, but I'm talking like, what did they put in that 30 and 24 inch beam, 1990? The city did, we put 30 inch in.
Oh,
Yeah,
there were,
yeah, in the 90s, and then they made it
90s,
24, like in the
24.
early 2000s.
To get, do we, it's something that has to be looked at for not just the town of Candegua, but
yeah,
Farmington and
transmission main up to this point. Here's 16 inch that comes off. And that's why, as you see this, because other versions of the master plan at one time and other systems, the dotted lines,
yes,
to get supply to the north.
right.
Through the farmland, that's why we killed that.
Right, so,
Yeah, whatever.
It was-
Down New Michigan
So
Road
basically,
across here, it was locked in the plan from 20 years ago.
Right.
And it's 16 inch transmission main out in that area to supply the demands.
so the tank being at its elevation is at some point in the future when the demands are pushing that extra 1 million gallons through the uptown area, that's when you probably want to look at upsizing the line down, back all the way down to the city.
Yeah, this is a very far out, because,
Right.
I mean, these are all the demands we have in mind right now, we understand what's going on. And it can change.
But even, I mean, the airport, I mean, I just had a conversation last week where they're talking about needing additional changes to be able to de-ice the planes in the winter with the jet traffic that they're having and then the sewer. I mean, so there's any number of different things that are also in the works that are gonna really start to impact the system overall.
Well, given the glacial speed at which government works, these conversations with the city should start soon. I mean, because 5-10 years is nothing is municipal time.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, if anything comes back to the water supply permit, I mean, that's probably a decade-long process at that point.
Well,
That's what it took the last time.
Yeah.
pushing water from there up, and we have no idea what condition the city.
Yeah, their own lines. Yeah, it's just like talking with Tim, right? It's,
Yeah.
we have our knowns at this point, but then eventually you get inside the city and it's a little bit of a black box. So we don't know what's, exactly what their conditions are. And, when's the last time they looked at the capacity of their line? Well, that makes sense for their development. And
But the other problem that we run into, and that they run into too, right, is from their capacity, they're essentially built out. They've got some small development. From their capacity, it's like, we don't have a problem, right? And so that's where we're gonna have to take the lead. We're gonna have to force the conversation and bring everybody together.
The issues they've been having with the city, I believe, over by the VA. They're in the, I heard at one point they're upsizing and changing the tank that they have for.
Right.
For pressures within there, because this area within the city, it's in that high spot. This is where they have the lower pressures, and so. Some kind of on-site. Yeah, it's just, it serves only the facility.
Right.
Somewhere on that.
You're probably gonna, there's another take off.
There's the North Canada.
Although I know there's one like right.
Yeah,
on
that's
the
just.
VA, so, okay.
Yeah, that's the VA.
But essentially, I'm sorry, the report says that we clearly need to replace this water tank.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
the big takeaway from this are.
Yeah. No, it's,
The CSWD got to proceed, and conversations with the city need to start sometime soon to get the ball rolling on what we do for the next 20 to 50 years.
But as you have said, we not only need to look at distribution, but also it sounds like we need to look at the plant itself. So how do we?
Well, I mean, that would be the lead from the city, right? So, you know, my point to Peter was, you know, do a comprehensive study, package up a large enough project, go after a WIA or an IMG. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you could go either way.
There's that, or you do what Doug suggested, you know, maybe we put a master meter up at Monroe County, we push it back this way, that might, you know, spur them a little bit, because let's face it, they like the revenue too.
Right, no,
Okay.
yeah, it does help them for sure.
What connections exist in Monroe County?
Well, Victor is Monroe County.
We can only push it as far as town line.
Yeah, Victor's Monroe County.
Victor's Monroe County, there are closed valve connections here.
I
There are
think that,
connections through.
yeah,
They're closed valve.
they're closed valves. I think their hydraulic grade line is lower than ours.
Yeah, lower.
Yeah,
They are
so
lower.
we would have to lift out of there.
It's one of those things that when you do the vulnerability assessments, you gotta do the updates every year. You know, they wind up calling me and asking, what's the pressure, what's the flow available? Because even big picture wise, you know, through Hopewell, they tie into, they got Gorham Water, but they also have an interconnection that goes to the town of Seneca. And Seneca buys all their water from the town of Canandaigua. Or sorry, from the town of Geneva,
Yeah,
to Sean Point Wells.
Yep.
You know, so they supply that whole area, and within Hopewell, they've had more and more of a need to rely on that connection, on something they've had in the past because of dairy operations. You know, dairy operations have a really big impact on facilities. Some of the communities that deal with more rural in nature, that have agricultural. Growing apples, pears, whatever you want out there. A lot of the farmers are starting to put in drip irrigation systems. So a little tiny drip's not that much, right? But
Well,
can you give me 50 gallons per minute for the entire summer? You know, that adds up.
Yeah,
You know.
So where do we need to go from here to keep the process moving?
well, I think in the conclusion of the report is we need to move forward with the 202B resolution and then hopefully get that tank project back online, get it rebid and get it under construction, utilize the IMG grant that's already in hand, and get that project moving along. That we will have to make corrections to, or not corrections, that's not the right word. We'll have to make changes because we can't fit the exact same project.
Right.
So, and I do have ideas as to how I think I can hopefully make the tank cost a bit more less risky for those contractors and put more of it into the general contract that was doing the transmission main. I think that was some of the problems that we ran into, is that the amount of work that we had on the tank contractor, and really the site work, was probably more than what they were really capable of doing, and they were using these small subcontractors to do it, but their fees were like way out of line. So there's some subtle changes we can make along those lines to kind of hopefully help get us a better general number. I don't know if the number will be higher or be lower. Again, it's a little bit of a crapshoot.
Are you looking at just the tank, or you look at the tank and the interceptor?
It's the tank and then it's the transmission north. 'Cause
Okay,
it
'cause I
had-
think there was
you
some
have to have,
discussion, okay,
you have to have that connection north, because that connection north is what helps basically freshen the tank. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna end up with much, you'll just end up with much older water than, because
more of it.
we're trying to set a preferential point between zone 1 and zone 2 to go through the tank to just make sure that 2 million gallons isn't sitting there.
Is the tower still the same size?
Yeah, yep.
Is it big and lose it?
Yeah, the tank is definitely, it's the 2 million gallon tanks is the appropriate amount, because it's still considered the 6,000 gallons a minute. And some of those higher fire flows that we had in the industrial area. And those are some of the things that really controlled the size of the tank. the amount of equalization storage in that tank is like what, it's only like 300 to 400,000 of the 2 million. The rest of it is mostly fire flow for the most part.
Well, that's the whole issue, really driving the whole. I mean, putting that back together again and rejiggering the verbiage and all that. But in addition to that, we still can't cross that property.
Yeah, we still have that issue with.
That issue has to be resolved, so. And that issue can only be resolved if someone says, yeah, you're gonna get a road. Here's when and how.
Unless we go on 332, which
Well,
adds to the
right,
cost,
cost.
but I'm just,
Well, and I was up there the other day and had a conversation, and I'll probably have another conversation, but Greg, you and I had a conversation about maybe as part of this project, we can put maybe we can put a stone base in without put a road, that may go a long enough way to get us.
Right. So I don't have a problem with it because we carried, I think, a 10 or 12 foot wide stone base for really the trail.
right,
But, you know, if we just, you know, doubled it to say 25 foot wide, then we call it a road sub base. Right.
Well, there's a change.
Right. So I mean, you know, but I'm just saying, like, we could,
Yeah.
in a $13 million job,
Exactly.
we can find a way to make that work.
Well,
Well, you have to, because
the other thing is, keep in mind right now, we have an RFP out for the data, right? That maybe we can get some grant money to go back and then take that base to a actual road based on the analysis of that. That's kind of the plan there, to identify what the true needs are with the development that we have and what we think the impact is going to be to Brickyard Road, the crossing on 332. And then if we can apply, hopefully in 23 for CFA money for the safety improvements aspect to get up to a traffic controlled intersection at 332 on Town Line Road after I kind of get Jim off of Town Line.
Yep.
Then
20, what is that, 24? Yeah, that's about right.
You're
5
you're moving,
years on
you're
Town
moving
Line
30
Road.
feet away.
I'm at the speed of government, right, Terry?
Every morning, I leave my house and I see our guys
Right.
for the last
So
4 years.
We're moving him the whole way to Purdy Road.
That's right.
That's a
you
long
won't have them
time.
to give you a wake up call
Right.
anymore.
It sounds like you've been talking to the city. Should we give them some formal letter of concern and ask for some kind of response if they're looking?
We invite them here.
Well, actually, I just had a conversation actually with completely separate conversation with the mayor, and he brought up a couple things, and I said, you know, a few years ago, we had a kind of a joint meeting with the board and the council and just like a spaghetti dinner. Maybe it's time and go about it kind of that way, very soft. Hey, here's an issue that we're all concerned about.
Well, maybe invite the mayor to the next LBC meeting, we discuss it there.
Yeah, we can do that too.
Next week, so, yeah.
I gotta tell you, the city was very helpful. With the management information on here. You know, it's one of those things, as I started talking to them, you know, I know a points of connection where water bought, you know, it's really bought by Canandaigua now and bought by, I hope, that the city was able to give me all like 3 years worth of meter data, master meter reading data for all points of connection. So I knew what's being supplied in these areas. And then going through that, some of it's kind of interesting in that like 2021 was a very, it was pretty high demand.
Well, 21 and 19 were both high demand.
Yeah, it was like kind of like, they had some areas were kind of outliers on there. 2020 was fairly representative of what's going on, but it was still higher than what the normals are.
So
So
you
you
had
can
a
see.
drought in 19, pandemic in 20, dry in 21.
Everybody's working.
You know, you imagine there's, when you look at this data log, it's kind of sad thing. I could see over time, you start seeing trends in how the water is used for the day. You look at the pressure, so you see the pressure out here in the mornings, it drops off, people getting ready to go to work, and it actually starts coming up towards noon. And then at like 6 o'clock, between 6 and 8, it is like the most highest demands in the system. It's almost like a straight drop off pressure. It's this weird, consistent with just about everything.
Dishwasher.
Yeah.
Everything in
Everything.
the
It kind of gives you an idea of it was work pattern.
Yeah.
Right.
What you're saying is we need to ship more residents out of town for evening jobs.
So, Greg, once we get back to our town board and they would like to move forward, what do you think the time frame is to regather your,
We're probably gonna have, probably 30 to 45 days to get ourselves ready to get back out to bid, between, just re-updating everything, and then, like I said, making these changes to the contract documents, and then, we put out the bid, it'll be a, 4-week bid. So I don't know, you're probably not seeing anything back until September or October.
and should we then consider wait until spring, so we're not dealing with winter?
No, I think, because a lot of it's gonna be delivery of steel, is the issue, so
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
getting them started sooner than later is
Okay.
gonna be our best interest. And we already know the construction is gonna take essentially a 2-year period anyways, because, they have to build it, and then we have to make sure everything passes and everything's hunky dory, and then we have to paint it. And the painting has to happen, in the correct environmental conditions. So that'll bleed into the following year.
So, moving this forward, obviously the trail, I know I have to be the one just because I have a decent relationship with the Jackos, I gotta go sit down with them. But the Auburn Trail. Originally, we had said we were gonna put the Auburn Trail on top of it, then we said we weren't, and it was gonna cross back and forth. We now know that the mobile home park will not let us put the Auburn Trail in that corner. Can we put the Auburn Trail on top of the transmission line and keep the transmission line on the west side of the road going up?
Maybe
It's the,
to Purdy Road, but.
yeah, parts of it, but then I think we jumped the other side.
Well, I think it went back and forth. If I remember right, it came under Brickyard at the tank and went up the west side to the dip and then crossed over to the east side at the mobile home park
Yeah,
and then went up on the curve, but they won't let us cross the Auburn Trail. If we could keep the transmission line on the west side until we
outside
get to
radius.
Purdy Road. And then if you cross over whatever, we're still gonna have to bring the trail on the north side of Purdy Road. That would help us a lot, and at least getting that portion of the Albert Trail done after all these years.
yeah, let's, what I'll do is I'll probably just take those plans out and we can just have a quick little meet and figure out where we want to relocate it to. That was part of some of the change run, so not a problem.
Don't you have room in front of the trailer park?
I think Doug's house is like
Of
right
course,
away.
right
So
away.
I don't know if Doug wants, I don't know if he wants, I don't know if he wants the trail behind his backyard.
Because I know they're not allowing you to go around the back, and that, we heard that too.
No, they won't let us go on their property at all.
Oh, but
So
don't you
I
have
think
right
there's
away?
room in
Enough
the
right
right
away
of
there?
No, not enough. There's not enough right away.
That's a
on the
3
south
ride
side.
road, it's
Yeah.
no, it's a 3 ride, it's a 49 and a half.
That's why we gotta go to the north. side.
Yeah, it's a, because we had to get the easement to put the sewer in back in. Yeah,
Your biggest issue though, Doug, is still gonna be like this part right here.
Yep.
It's just a
Wetland.
massive
Yeah,
wetland.
Yeah, that's the issue with all of it. The
So we
wetland
did
we
have
gotta
plans.
turn it out.
Yeah.
We looked at that.
what are the pictures, we got easement from them.
All right, there's definitely challenges. That's, and the challenge with the tank site itself is that farm is protected and then they won't give us an easement. The owner said no to an easement to.
Right.
What's the existing tank? An easement or?
No,
feasible land?
no.
No, but we were looking for a temporary construction easement
Oh,
and they said no.
you need a little more.
Yeah, it drives up the cost of construction a little bit for the tank because of the pick point with crane, it's just narrower, But it's not, it's not making or breaking the project, we can function without it.
So Greg, the road itself, essentially it stays the same spot, right? So
Yeah.
if I talk to them about the same, but we'll have to update the easement. And then he's gonna wanna update it memorandum of understanding, go with the updated easement. With width and everything.
You're talking about this.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It would still be a 70-foot wide. In this case, we'd make it a right of way, I guess, at that point versus anything else.
Good.
Derek, thanks for spending time, I appreciate it.
Very informative.
It's kind of really interesting stuff in the background of this.
Well, I did read, actually, I read almost all the report, I,
6 million gallons based on the equipment
No,
or based on what you can draw.
so the filter plant itself is proven to be able to run at filtration rates of up to 9 SGD. The problem with doing that consistently though is, there's a needed staff and then there's all the reject water that's created. Whether or not they can sustain that, that's another question, but they can get up to a 9 MGD. So the 6 MGD withdrawal rate is based off of the lake safe yield, study or safe yield analysis.
Which started. 1988. Because they helped work on that when I worked at.
But that, because you have to realize the safe yield, includes, Rushville, it includes Orem, it includes, Hopewell, includes.
Yeah, everybody's.
Or not Hopewell, because they don't take, but Newark and Palmyra, they're all taken from that lake.
So what kind of muskrat on the south end of the lake.
Muskrat?
Yeah, it's probably the safety of the south end of the lake, there's kind of muskrat.
At least it's not microinvertebrates, right?
Yeah. They're gonna drink out of die.
We're just dealing with DEC in Bristol Mountain. They're upset about the microinvertebrates in the creek in my creek.
Let's talk trash.
let's talk trash. Really?
So to update everybody on the transfer station project, survey was completed, updated survey of the project area. Look at the. I don't think you guys provided for 2 buildings, which are very good at kind of help dictate and kind of send us to the next path. One of the circulations that you guys were originally showing was basically coming in with building number 1 or station number 1, which is basically your refuse and general waste and recyclables, and then circle back around. This plan is kind of to consolidate that movement for a number of reasons. One, we have a lot of grade changes on the property. Second is just the amount of pavement and circulation and the efficiencies of using it. I'm going to jump to the larger sheet. Okay. So the thought process is you come off through behind the town hall, access a road.
We cheated this way towards the sewer to maintain the viability of any development on this parcel for the town.
You still have a buildable
As you
area.
remember how originally we came across on a diagonal, right? So
You still have buildable area here. You still have, areas up front here that we could do something as well.
So that's basically where we were entering temporarily when we had the temporary thing. to go
Yeah.
this way.
And right now, here's the gate, here's the highway garage. We have a stormwater pond that feeds basically this area, drops down into this location. You kind of see,
Oh, that's a pond.
the size of that. So this is all burned around here. So we're trying to avoid that area. This project will need a pond and we can get back to that. From a building standpoint, circulation, basically you come in, you're feeding traffic through here. They have a decision to make. Are they going to be dropping off their general waste recyclables? If they are, that's their first stop. They come in through here, drive up, and then we have our dumpsters in this location. This would be a depressed area where we could pull them out. That's kind of what you guys are showing here.
this is basically looking at the Victor barn and just doubling it. So you have it's 2 lanes undercover, right? And then the rollies and compactors are on the outside. And there's space obviously in here if there was a scale for each location, you could do that for way in and fro.
Exiting traffic would then, if they have metals and C&D, they could come in through here. Drop off their items and then go out. If someone comes in first for their metals and construction demolition debris, they could either loop in through one of these lines and then go back out, or if they forgot that they needed to drop off general waste, they could get back in line and come through here. If they're interested in mulch and brush drop off, again, they can come through one of these lines, drop off, unload, and then work their way around. So you kind of have one circulation path all the way around the facility. And then you also have these additional opportunities for if loading, if traffic gets too heavy, that you can kind of divert them off into the side paths. We would like to know a little more what you guys think about these two buildings and how they would look at. Maggie is on line 2, our architect. And I think we'll set up a separate meeting to go into those discussions. But from a site circulation standpoint, there's talk about, I know you had a scale here, you had some dumpster enclosures, then you had maybe enclosed space for TVs, electronic waste. Is the envision that this would be a 3-sided open building, or is it envisioned where you come in, scale in, and then, you know, maybe you have to loop around to scale out or something, or maybe there's 2 scales to measure your waste.
Or is a scale just specifically for the C and D, so.
Yeah, it's a small scale where you bring all your stuff to like an electric motor and you weigh it in and your copper, and then they scale it out and you have your values.
This is a,
Is this trash and recycling in this?
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
So what, one thing I'm a little concerned about is that we got this reverse traffic here. Can we put the operational side of this building over here so we, you know, kind of, that'll be the operation rather than starting your double back up here, you know, so you only have really one double back.
We could do that. I didn't know if this was a fully open sided, the only thought was just kind of wind and keeping everything. This is basically your maybe a closed wall area. And if this is gonna be open, that's fine, and maybe these are swapped, and then you can kind of share the backside of pulling out individual dumpsters out of this building too, so.
Well, think about that, because
Yeah.
that kind of concerns me a little, because I kind of like the idea of just having
Everybody output,
everyone out here instead of all of a sudden you got people coming in here and all of a sudden you get, I mean,
But wouldn't
just
they-
think about it.
yeah,
But isn't
no,
that
it-
the exit for this too? Wouldn't
Yeah,
that back up?
it is.
What's going to come out of here?
But that doesn't necessarily have to be a complete building to cover everything.
no,
right,
No,
No,
I mean, it's really just the electronic. Well, right now, we don't cover C and D and metal.
No, we should.
Well, I don't know, that's a question.
No, we should.
yeah, that's,
We're
we're supposed to.
I think you're
I think-
supposed to as part of our kind of safety, right?
So,
So I kind of visualize that as a 3-sided
A
thing,
3-sided
with
building,
one side open
okay,
and kind of like you got it,
Yeah.
yeah. So 3-sided one, except maybe consider opening on that side rather than on this side, so you don't have this turn back here.
But
Well,
you'd
think
you'd
about
be
it.
open on the windward side though, right?
so.
yes.
So there's a couple, you get your open on the windward side, but let's say you drop off here first. And then you have to go back to the recycling, how do you have to obviously train your mindset to.
The
do-
large majority is going to be coming out of here
And we can
and
cycle
they're gonna get stuck
bypass.
behind these people trying to go.
You also have to be able to get in there and mash everything down. So
Well,
top of
that's
that
another
building,
thing, and I was just thinking that,
and that's what we do
Well, we're not matching these ones, right? These ones
No.
are
No,
gonna
that's
something
compact.
back.
No,
we compactors,
Yeah,
so
we're-
are we gonna do compactors on these as well?
no, not the
Yeah.
same.
I don't
now. No, but when stuff's put in there,
How
Just to
do-
push it down and net
it
it.
uses an excavator.
How do I drop off my trash and recycling and then get mulch? Like,
So
that's-
you'd either have to circle around or circle through here. We'd have to work on
But
that.
yeah, with
Yeah,
this
I know.
going like this. then you
We'd
can
have to put another,
Well, that was part of the reason why you had this, so you could bring in train and move around.
I'm just curious,
or, I mean, if there's an
Yeah, I
anomaly, you
think
might
that's
have
what
to
we're
come
gonna
to.
do this.
what was your thought on the 2 buildings versus one? Was it a movement thought you had, like you were trying to create better movements versus driving through one long building? And then next thing, or Were you trying to separate
We
stuff?
we went with these.
Oh, okay, all right. I was just
We
curious.
stuck
what the idea
with these
is.
ideas, it's kind of like thinking,
Okay.
these were, because, I mean, this building is more or less defined because from what we have from Victor, but this is one of the question mark buildings that even our, architect has some questions, so we're just trying to find
Programming,
how that, what are the needs in this particular space, like what are the uses, what are the common activities?
If you want them separated, because people coming in with C and D stuff takes time to load,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Does that
not
come like on what, a trailer? Everything bringing in a trailer, big truck, electronics?
everything.
That was my other
Right.
question.
You could do electronics in here, maybe have a little, they scale in, they run over, they dump off their electronics, right? And keep moving.
That was my other question about the CD, like. We have to design it where someone could back either trailer into what they're bringing in. Just. I'm almost thinking of, well, no, actually, I was thinking turn at 90 degrees.
Turning this 90.
Yeah, both. So you would come in one, get rid of your stuff. You could bypass that if you want to come around the other side. That building and that leak.
We looked at that too, a little bit rotating, and then it was, some of it was just to visibility, what do you wanna see from the road? Do you wanna see all these dumpster enclosures? Do you wanna see cars entering and coming through here? And
Yeah,
then
these spaces would decidedly be cleaner.
cleaner looking to it.
I was just thinking if someone had a trailer and they could come make this loop around, the only thing I was thinking is like maybe this ends up being covered and the scale is actually in the path of where everyone's driving, that way you can scale them if needed, right, and then they can offload
Jim,
it.
don't you think this would be the least used building?
The size of that building's also.
Okay,
a little
this is most used.
Yeah.
The other way, we have people dropping mulch,
They do a
dropping
lot.
brush off. So why put the least used up front? Why don't we put this back here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have the original flow, my original flow.
I have the mulch over here.
I had this out here, so if you have this up here, people can
Yes.
go through here, or they can take the bypass and go straight to here and go straight to mulch.
Do you need to worry about mulch and brush with the pond at all, or?
So this now that goes back to our other pond discussion. So
Yeah.
this is considered by New York State DEC as a hotspot. So it requires additional stormwater, a separate stormwater facility from this.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be treated like that because you have things that may fall off cars and get washed down and washed into different locations. So we're gonna have to look at that and come up with a stormwater management plan. Similar to what you guys have already with your Part 260 permit.
Could you use, put a between 5 and 20 in there and then they could discharge?
We could discharge down here, we might
Yeah.
be able to discharge here, or maybe be able to work, because all this sits up high. And we have more fill that's been brought in here, so there's some opportunities for that too. This is really long-term, what do you guys wanna do with your construction and demolition debris? If people are, if this gets changed, there's different changes in the county level with trash. Are contractors gonna bring their roofing materials in and their 2x4s, and is somebody gonna separate it and then load it into a larger tractor trailer and then haul it out?
Homeowners.
Homeowners, yeah,
Not
totally.
contractors.
Homeowners, no commercial, so,
Yeah.
so homeowners could bring in all their roofing, their insulation, and their 2x4s all in one big pile and just dump it and run, or are we going to have that separated, because there's different pricing for separation? If you get into separation, do we want it to be loaded into a larger tractor trailer where we have to find kind of a compressed pit and push wall so that they can kind of easily scoop it in? We've done it at other locations too.
Kind of like the. It's got your cover though.
How about, how much to pull the containers out from the, yeah, from there, how much space do we have coming out onto that, asphalt or whatever area there? What about storage of extra?
Here, I guess.
Yeah,
What
right.
size that for?
This is kind of a size of a
Yeah.
car, so just kind of give you perspective. The site is large. It can get shrunk a little bit and it can grow on RD buildings.
Cause we have quite a few containers that are stored either full or waiting to be filled. Where we store those is a question also.
So, one of the things I have, is, you know, I kind of have this up here, and then I have this building kind of oriented more this way, so you know. Your flow is always this way, and you can go past all these without cutting across here, you know, and you can go out, so you only have one exit. But if, you know, if you shift that up and orientate that this way, so people either go by it and either pass or stop, and then go past the mall. I don't know.
We might be able to move this kind of from here to this
Yeah,
location.
look at that original slow I had, because as soon as you start doubling back, you know,
And yours was nice out because you had like an infield area.
yeah.
And it allowed you room to expand the mulch if you had to. And also you could park containers in there.
Yeah, that mulch pile is massive. I mean,
Yeah.
that's massive, so I'm like,
This is ice.
there's not a limitation on space for that mulch.
Well, then.
I think this building is probably way oversized for what's actually going on there, in my
If you
opinion.
put that up here and orientate that this way, and then put the mulch down here, you can keep everything going in that one
And
direction
clockwise.
with one out.
Mhm, correct.
I don't know, look at, you've got that old diagram.
I do, I have it, I liked it, yeah.
I mean, just think about it.
So where are we putting the gate?
The gate, it'd be right here is the gate.
Well, it's
Didn't
probably
you-
probably going
Yeah,
down
right
here.
Didn't you
Gates
put
or
this
maybe-
further in though, to reduce give it more of a traffic buildup?
So, yeah, so you have a
Further in.
A long queue line.
Yeah,
See, that's part of the loss, you lose some of your queue line.
that's what
by,
I think that was why.
Yeah, well, we have all here that we can queue all the way up to your two-way traffic.
If I'm from Buffalo Street Extension, how am I getting to this? Are you still gonna go through your,
No, you're all through.
Yeah.
you know, all through it.
you're gonna get even more people that wanna have a new road. So, okay.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that there's gotta be, there's a couple of things that just went, the big building, right? I think you need to put the electronics in the big building, because I know like me, myself, even when I bring stuff, I'm bringing trash, I'm bringing electronics. It would save me from having to go tie up another lane if it's just in here. And then do you have enough room for future, think about the future development for adding additional containers in this building? Should this building be bigger? And then that building's just a C and D.
So one of those little squares is a roll off, so we could do multiple roll offs in there.
Okay, so you have from there.
If you look at the size of that building,
It looks like
I mean, you're almost as wide as the highway garage.
Okay.
That's-
That's just a spur that would go connect back up to there.
So
That's really
As an
for
employee,
like
for-
employees.
That's
right?
only, yeah, well, so that would be if you.
That's why my question on.
Yeah. But
I think it
then,
would be better with the mulch on this side, that way, if Jim wants to haul extra branch and debris up to the top yard or bring it back down, he doesn't have to go all the way to the far, to the back.
but we probably should think about still, the Adeline's question. I know that we don't want them in the area where all the equipment is, but is there a way to have kind of like a lane
Yeah,
to still get over to here? Because that intersection, I tell you guys, that intersection of Buffalo and 5 and 20 is dangerous. I hate using it.
it's very dangerous.
I'd rather cut it through the back gate.
No, we can't go west, it's all west,
I know.
so we can't go there.
Well, not without mitigating.
Well,
They
true.
can't do this.
Well, we definitely don't want to.
So the whole idea is real challenge.
I know.
People-
We don't, right, we don't want anybody to know
Over
this
there,
there.
agree.
I get all that, right? But is there a way we can cheat something on the edge? I don't know. I don't know the
Put a
answer.
fence along the whole thing.
Yeah, we probably would. We'd have
And then
to-
we've also talked about additional hours during the daytime,
Right.
we don't want mixing people in with us when we're working. so.
No, I know, I'm just trying to answer that question, because I can see that being the thing that the public's gonna have the biggest problem with.
I mean, like Greg said, there's mitigation, I just don't know how much mitigation it would be.
Right, we do have all this that we could do mitigation,
Yeah,
but anyway, that's down the road.
Yeah.
That's down the road.
Next on
We're gonna-
employee amenities in terms of bathrooms and like this. Have we
So-
discussed that being in one of the buildings or?
yeah, you're gonna have a restroom.
We are going to need it, and that really, that almost needs to be. So, Maybe you can speak more about that, but it's gonna need to be an energy code item, and so actually having the slab will need to be energy code compliant, it'll still need to be ADA accessible, it'll have to have the energy code, so you're almost end up building something onto the outside of this.
I think that's kind of had something up in there.
Which you
or
did,
something.
yeah, standalone, which was good. So I think we can easily accommodate that attached to one of these buildings, whichever one we want, but it would be its own
Right.
piece, because it's gotta have the heated, it's gotta have hot water, it's gonna have
And I think it should be orientated with the main building, because that's where.
most of the work is.
Right.
Is there enough room that in the future, should the landfill have 5 and 20 gallon larger containers, larger trucks?
That's the harder part, because it's, everything's designed around
Right.
really the
Oh, we have
rollies,
now.
yeah, it's really designed around rollies, so.
What we did at another site is we actually had a depressed pit where a tractor trailer could back into it, and then we created a push wall, so they could do their sorting and processing. It'd be the same way, if these are all lower docks, there's no reason why we can't pull in a tractor trailer, we just gotta be able to load it easily. So maybe it's a different configuration. And what are gonna be our priority for that, for tractor trailer? Would it be for C and D, or
You
would it
may
be
get
the
as
recycle?
much as
general
self-contained
waste?
compactor as you do
I
on.
was gonna say,
Right.
yeah, I was
So
gonna say,
why, yeah,
Why bother?
I think
Yeah,
your
why
issue is
bother?
gonna be you're gonna compact it into a rollie, and then you're gonna uncompact it to put it into another, and then recompact it into a larger.
No, I think if we went with self-contained units, we wouldn't necessarily have to have a drive up to get, like we have now. We probably lower it a little bit and put as much on those as we do.
So this is higher than naturally higher, this is going up, correct?
Yeah. it's going up.
Yeah.
are you letting the grades work for you here?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
I'm
we
like,
are.
boy,
We are.
I mean, you put something here,
You
you don't
gotta
have to
use gravity
dig
as much as
in.
possible.
So I would suggest another excursion that, you look at the old flow I had and how the buildings were orientated, and then kind of do a little more to scale so we can visualize it. a little
What was the worst we could do?
bit. But,
And then could you do else and then do what we talked about here, a little about a couple of different locations in different ways and give us an idea where that pond might go. I don't know anything that's going on at the county level as far as the big plan out. I do know they had a meeting,
Tuesday night,
did they have Tuesday night now?
Seneca, town of Seneca. I haven't heard what the result was, but, I mean, the landfill is supposed to stop in 2028, but town of Seneca was gonna consider allowing an expansion, but for local, for, county. rather
But
than
then
home,
that
but-
goes back to who's going to take care of what was there for the facility.
Yeah, I mean, Casella has the contract that is, as explained to us, they have written into that contract that as long as they are involved in the future with any expansion, whether it be global type thing or just county, as long as they are involved, they indemnify the entire landfill against any problems in the future. If they're cut out of it, then anything that happened prior to their involvement with the county is on the county. And from what we've heard, prior to Casella's involvement, there were some sins committed there. So
Tom, you were mentioning they're separating stuff. Is there any reason why people are separating shingles from wood?
You do get different price points when you drop them off. So they can use different cover over the landfill. For
I couldn't imagine to separate all like mine.
we had that.
It's done.
No, for recycling, I'm talking about C and D.
Oh,
C and D, yeah. A lot.
Mm,
It's a lot
Oh,
of,
yeah.
That-
C and D recycling operations.
it's huge.
Yeah. They float wood, they sink.
Yeah, they reuse it wood for pallets, they use it wood for
Put it in the
your
pond,
chips,
float the
your stoves, they use,
no, I can't.
So as mainly a user of this system, I would just like to keep the driving as simple as possible, because I know that's one of the biggest problems is poor
Yeah.
drivers right there. And my thought process is just something when you're designing this, you can think in your mind, everyone's going here. Almost everyone is coming there is going to this building. You need to have them come into this building and then get three options,
Yeah.
mulch, this building or exit, and they just need to have a clear, okay, option coming out of that, and then the.
But the idea
clear
that was
lane
there
between
is
those
like,
three
we're just trying to keep all the traffic flow going one direction for the most part. We're
Yeah.
trying to avoid any instance where people would like back up, you know?
Exactly.
Like, as soon as you have someone trying to back up with a trailer, I'm like, it's
Well,
like,
it's almost what I'm thinking, like maybe this should be here so that everybody's coming, if they're just doing their trash and recycling, they're coming here and going back out, you know, and then they have an opportunity to cut off to one of the other lanes if they need to.
If they needed
So-
to.
So I would look at, kind of, you need to leave the space so we can get the trucks in there and stuff like that, but I don't, kind of like what I had is I had it coming through. So you have a bypass where if you don't have anything here, you can go through it, but not have a bypass somehow,
Yeah,
not let the public go up here.
Yeah.
You need to have this, so the only choice for the public is come up here and either take the bypass and just go here and mulch, or come up here and go through. And then they could, if that building's oriented the other way, then they could go to those other things, but not have a bypass also. Cause one of my theories is people on a bypass, you don't want them cutting across here and slowing the traffic. This is your bottom point.
Right.
So you don't want people also coming across here and slowing this operation down. So but you need this space in a way for the trucks to do it. but
well, you
don't
need it on
want the
both
public.
sides.
You
You
don't
need
want-
it, you need it on both
Yeah,
sides, but
Yeah.
you're right, maybe we could cut one of these, this path off here, so it's not, I figured these could be coned off. Depending on however the daily traffic.
Or
is.
you just put like a gate, I mean, it could just be a gate, I mean.
Yeah, you could put a gate here, but the thing is not to put it in your plan that the public is gonna go.
Right,
You
right.
could put a
Yeah.
gate here that.
Is there a reason we're staying on this piece of property? I mean, you've got, yes, that main building is gonna be the main bottleneck. You've got the property to the north of that, maybe the mulch and the C and D up there a little bit to give you more flexibility here.
Yeah,
We could come
No,
back
I mean
over.
the other one.
yeah.
I think there's a lot going this way.
There is, but I think it's up farther. I think you got a little bit of room here, don't you?
I think that's pretty.
The property line is right here.
Yeah, we also own that property.
We can look at that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and well, the other thing too is that there's the.
Check your.
Is there a water main?
Right, Chuck?
We don't worry about that.
Anyway, you got plenty of food for thought.
Yeah, no, that's been good.
But those are some of our concerns.
I had one final thing that nobody's brought up. We often have a what do we call it, public space
Free
area,
speech.
free speech area.
Oh, yeah, we can put a gazebo.
Yeah,
Like
that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's right.
In the traffic line, I just think of that
Yeah.
too, so that.
The original plan, back when we did this, had a pull-off area with space for people to park and talk, because as I've said many times, it isn't just to drop off waste and recycling.
Right.
There's a social.
Yes, sadly, there's a big social component to the trash drop off.
But the key thing is don't do anything that would slow things down.
Exactly.
That's gonna be the bottom.
So they're gonna, want to socialize in there.
So maybe it can be like, here.
Yeah, put the free speech up at the town hall. While they're waiting in line for the talk to people.
Up in here maybe or something.
Yeah. Well, just, I mean, like, I think of the Arbor Day tree drop off, right? So if you
I know we
pull
have
over
stormwater pond
Yeah, I
up
think
here,
that's-
right? But
Yeah,
what's up in there?
Yeah, the old Brookside Park drops into a pond, and that pond.
But that's up
discharges into the
here.
wetland.
That's up here, and that's all up in here. I think you got a little bit of room you can cheat with in there.
There's nothing shaded, Doug, I'm with you.
So-
over there.
But the thing is no sense cheating if you don't need to, because I think that's a pretty good sized space. So take a look at.
Yep.
Look, take a look at.
And we're leaving
know,
this
Doug,
open
we own
because
this,
of the
right?
grade,
Yeah,
correct?
There's a new road right here.
Absolutely, why not? We
Yeah, I
fix
think-
that.
That is pushback from what you had, it's further back into the
Yeah.
property, which is good.
So based on this, do you guys feel that you need, on building, let's talk a little more about building.
Okay.
So do we want everybody to get scaled in and scaled out? Do we want a smaller scale where people are bringing their recycled or their precious metals, copper, aluminum, and then.
Are we waiting for the?
No,
metals?
no, we
So
don't
metals
weigh any
is-
metals,
We're
just
not
throw
weighing
it.
So only maintenance
But
needs
the
to
metals-
wait.
Metals are
Well,
free.
that's right, well, are we, is the town gonna reimburse?
We
them?
were weighing this because we have to pay to get rid of that.
So if we wait for C and D, I guess my question is, do we think that we wanna site the scale in the position where they're gonna be, throwing at that point in time, so they could pull up with their loaded vehicle or trailer, scale in, unload, and then
And scale back out.
Yeah, scale out and then pull out.
I mean, that's the
Or
way
do
you
you
should
want
do
them
it.
to, or do you want them to,
But the town isn't-
scale in,
Let me ask you this,
you gotta wait, so if they scale in, they get a weight, then go dump and then hit another scale.
That's only if they're getting reimbursed, so in this situation, town's not gonna reimburse for.
No,
for-
we'll charge.
no, before
No,
throwing
they
the charge,
charge
they throw
for
away
the
the
CND.
CND.
Yeah.
Could we have one large scale you drive on, it is what it is, you unload, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, instead
Well,
of,
that's what I'm saying, the scale would have to be cited in a position where
Yeah.
you're basically, you're throwing from that location.
Right, so you're gonna have extra looping traffic, if you only have one scale, you're gonna have people looping back around.
yeah,
Unless,
And then
unless
they-
they can, unless you can scale in and throw while you're on the scale, you know what I'm saying?
that's
So
right, yeah.
if you're on the scale and tossing at that same
But
time.
if you have a trailer and you gotta dump it off.
You
Yeah.
have every combination and you have multiple people using it, so you don't.
Yeah, I
have
know,
the
that's
back
the,
of the car.
different trailers, different,
Where are you doing like large furniture disposal or something like that?
just bring it here.
Yeah, but that's the CMD stuff.
That's the
C&D,
CND
yeah.
stuff, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
We already have a list, what we charge for,
Right,
and all that. I don't know that you need to consider it for this, do you?
Okay. Works for me.
I mean, we know what you consider.
I mean, I just, we already charge, or we're typically, we are never red in CND,
Wow.
okay, we cover our costs.
Are we
Yeah.
charging by weight
That's-
now or by item? It's by
Ticket.
item. isn't it? Yeah.
Do you just build in the flexibility if you ever wanted to scale in the future?
Well, I have an
That-
area that you could
Well,
come
it-
back in and mount something there.
That is basically the issue, is the scale, like in how you scale in, scale out. It's two scales, one scale is the scale close to your throw point.
Scales
Down
are
the road.
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, there's,
Scales are expensive, and they have maintenance, they have to be calibrated and blah, blah, blah.
I think it's hard if like people are pulling in trailers, right? Cause in theory, you're gonna have to unhook your trailer, scale it, then rehook your trailer to move it.
I think our bigger issue
Right.
is non-town residents using it than.
Right.
The contractor is actually.
But that gets them
You know what I'm
to-
saying, Jim? Like it presents a challenge and like trying to figure out how you actually do that.
I think we need to revisit this plan, so some of the ideas that get thrown out. But then there's a kind of an overarching question of keeping non-residents out of here. I don't really think you need to get into that today.
We'll just put a big sign here.
You're right.
Right.
It'll
be the archway.
You're probably gonna have
A
to put
big
it
archway
here,
entrance.
so
you know,
that
kinda like
they can
Place
be
Stone, right?
in
One of those
line
big metal-
before they have to.
Over
When
the top.
you're politicking, you can also check to see if they're residents.
There you go.
Right.
Well, that's what Victor.
I have to do that for 4 more years, Chuck.
But one of the things we figured was because these are card operated, that you're gonna have a control there, you know, a guy who doesn't have a card is gonna come in here and
Yeah.
not gonna be able to do anything. And the idea here was you're gonna charge them if they bring stuff in and you charge them for it, you know, maybe
Oh,
that's
yeah,
not.
that's
bad.
right.
But this was kind of the separator, because we were gonna have a card system attached to it.
At some point, we're gonna
have a
have,
whole
we
conversation.
get the page to throw, but initially that is that's not been decided at all.
Right, you gotta have more conversation, because you could even do plate readers, you could do any number of different things, that, you gotta have a whole other conversation about that, so.
Or state.
You can go a little bit of a hospital effect in
And we
here, and
answer your
like have
question
like
as
the green line being
Station
your
two.
refuse and
Yeah, I know, we
recycle.
talked about C and D.
You know, blue line
Yeah,
being
yeah,
your
yeah.
CD
The-
and whatever
all this
metals, and
sounds
then
like
your
we're
brown
gonna
line
make
is
room
just
for
mulch, right?
Building, first building.
Oh, the first building.
And I weight lines.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make at
I
least,
don't know about waste oil.
we're gonna make electronic, so we have batteries,
Jim,
waste
do you have
oil,
to
electronic
avoid
line,
tires
clearance, and
when you
tires.
Bring them to
Are
where
all
you're
in.
only.
It's
So we
actually.
can weigh in, and at the scale. and
Okay,
They weigh, they come in and they weigh.
It's on here.
but it still ends up.
So
we don't
being
need to take
we don't need
positive.
So Jim,
Per item charges.
The
still works.
CUD
No
would
charges.
cover our
No
costs.
good years. You want no good years.
So,
I'm just wondering if it,
Unless they're good, you know, I mean.
if it's
Right,
covered.
in my
it's good.
house.
Let's visit this one.
Let's visit
And
this
the
one.
reason I put this down here, because again, you know, this is the bottleneck. As soon as you add more things to it, you know, you're gonna slow the process down. You know, if we're gonna have them weigh it and do it, you know, start adding this in there, it's gonna bog this down, you know. Somebody who
Well,
has
it's a
these,
slow process. to
somebody
get
has these
CUD off,
specialized
right?
items.
it is.
If they have these specialized items, they can go to the specialized building.
So if you have small batteries or a small electronics, what are you gonna do with that? Maybe there's a special recycle one, maybe there's one pull off and it is a small recyclable for small.
There needs to be a
e-waste,
room
small
that can be
e-waste.
enclosed and secured in the best way possible. In case someone does take something, because they gotta stay, the electronics have got to stay dry.
So maybe there's a small electronic in here, if someone's dumping off their waste,
Right.
and then if it's too big,
too big,
the
yeah,
person
go to
says
the
you
other
rejected, go to the number
Right.
2 building.
And paint, because we had to do paint there, right?
We don't know, I don't know.
No.
The,
We don't have to, we
the
can
paint stores.
participate.
Paint
Okay.
stores will take it.
I'm
I know
not,
they are.
that
but-
Yeah.
is, we'll have to look at our 360 permit about
Yeah.
adding to it, and I don't know if we want.
I know, I was just wondering. just wondering.
You know, right now you spill the kitty litter and it's solid, and it's good, so.
That's what you do, okay. good
Yeah.
job.
Kitty litter,
Take the litter.
I think all of this is difficult,
You know-
to wait until we pull the trigger and do this.
Yeah.
And people sit there and wait. and then we do it. I will be off the board by that time. We'll try
Thanks,
something.
I mean, inherently, for the amount of queue length and the traffic flow, even just that's in here versus what you have, that's the light years beyond what you have now.
Yeah, this.
yeah,
But people are used to 8 wide,
Yeah,
pulling in,
And
other stuff, be out of here in 30 seconds.
And we wanna.
And that's why we gotta, you know, keep this as efficient as possible, because that's the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
and
I
we're sure
also
we're good
want
with
to-
two.
we talked about charge, like in one building, but. In my opinion, we should, if we're gonna have a spot to charge and we're not charging the throw, keep that. Open and push electronics to see me in one spot, so you have one machine that collects money, not two. Do you follow what I'm saying? Okay, just putting that out there. I understand why the windward side we can close, but also. see
Well, if we
where else-
reorientate it that way,
Right.
then it won't be a problem.
But you also gotta be able to get in there and that stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
Well, you're gonna have to service it from this side on that.
yeah, I think we'd have to start cheating back that way, because
I think it's
the sewer is right there, yeah, that runs down that back.
let's say Alex put over there and they gotta go up to it. To be able to, but then they got enough room to back around. So we got to just make sure we leave enough room first with the back up to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was-
I
I
kinda
would-
showed it kind of recessed a little bit, you know, a working area out here and then the buildings recessed a little bit.
Yeah, I would definitely avoid asking anybody to back up.
Mm.
That's,
But they're
that's,
gonna-
but you know, that's what we all do now, because
Yes,
they
in the
come
back of the
trucks,
pickup
they
truck.
pull up and they back up to it and they unload it. So we're not,
yeah.
they're not gonna go over the
What
side
are
of
the
the
free
vehicle.
speech area? It's fun to watch. for-
No, but I mean, if you can get them close enough to it so that they, so they can, I guess that my point was, I felt like this lane wanted to be in the building. So
Understand.
so you could be closer to it, that way you didn't have to.
Passed it over. and you did-
Right,
Yeah, but
exactly,
Then you have guys come in with their dump trailers full of stuff,
right.
and they back up and dump it.
So was the envision that they would back in here, back into these, and these would be pulled out the sides? Or the,
It's kind of, it's, yeah.
Free for all.
You know, I mean, it's not,
Well, what
it's
if
not
we-
a good
What if we
answer.
just say, there is no dump
Back it
trailer?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
I guess that's the whole
Backing up.
point, like every time I
They're
talk to anybody that
residential
runs these
uses.
transport facilities, as soon as they say you're letting someone with a trailer back up, it's doomsday. It blocks everybody off, everyone gets pissed off. That's where, you know, most of the aggravation comes from, because people are blocking traffic. So you're just trying to keep, so everything is,
I know what you're saying.
Are those residential users too? I mean, that's the question.
Oh, yeah, they just come in, you know, they clean out their house or get their buddy's trailer and
Yeah,
come unload and. I mean,
Maybe
you always
control
do,
that by price.
yeah,
Trailer, it's $100.
Right.
true. I mean, Victor's got that, I'll call it the outdoor spot they dump into and they scoop it up with equipment, put it in the CID. When they come in trailers. I mean, it's a possibility, but
you gotta create like a separate little bunker.
right, yeah, create such a bunker, so.
So, you know, without looking at my original diagram, you know, I think what I kind of like
Okay, we'll see that.
visualized was this would probably not be part of the building, that's kind of was part of the working space. So you, and if you don't have a scale, you can put this right along here, so you basically drive along and you're right adjacent to these two things here. You know what I'm saying? So this is really kind of working space, not part of the
Not
building.
part of the building. Okay.
So you just drive up and
Drive up and here's your edge and then you just
yeah,
chuck it
and
into.
if we don't do the scale, then it'd be kind of like we have now, you could have a couple of vehicles here and dumping at the same time.
There is something to be said,
With no backups.
So no backups.
No
So that
backups.
you pull in,
Load if you
throw
were
in,
to
you
decide.
could have maybe two cars
Yeah,
on the side, they
yeah.
throw in.
And I think that's what, you know, this
That's
is,
what you're
this is really kind of space saver, this was more of the structure.
I mean, if you're pulling the rollies off the short side of the barn, if you're pulling them out that way, then you could have essentially access from both sides if you weren't weighing them.
We're not weighing, it takes, that,
You gotta
not
make-
weighing helps, the less.
Yeah,
the less
exactly.
we weigh,
You-
if we're
Yeah,
just
I
taking
mean,
the
You have
debris-
two sides of that dumpster, so you can throw from two sides of that dumpster, as long as you can pull them out the short
Correct, you
ends.
get both sides. You
Weighing
feed
is
it
a
in.
tough nut. You know,
Well, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, it
You waste the
complicates
middle.
things quite a bit.
Then you pull them out, these are depressed, alright.
Cause it, you know, ideally, you'd like to, if you were doing that, cause the whole thing for the throw, you don't want them to really weigh. And throw, like have all that in the same kind of, you want them to pull up and just throw. So you almost wanna weigh them in an advanced location.
How does the town know how much,
Is it one person throwing stuff in at a time?
one person throwing it?
We have a
Why don't
list.
you weigh the dumpster?
Well, that's the next question, how does the town weigh the dumpster so that they know that they're approved to be on the road?
they don't weigh the dumpster.
You don't weigh it filled, you
No.
just,
We just
Instead of
pull
waiting
up
for
on
the
there and pop off.
Instead of weighing the individual vehicle, you weigh the dumpster, if it's one person coming in, you mark the weight when it started, and mark the weight after they throw it in.
Oh, cause there's like 5, 6 people at a time.
That's heavy, that's the other
Yeah.
problem too, like if I have 2 or 3 of them backed up to it, they're all just.
Yeah.
So in a lot of the, so that's why you either have a double cycle to like scale in, dump, and then someone has to make the loop back around to scale out to use one scale. Or there's a different, or you have 2 scale points, or, you know, there's
Or
a
no
scale
scale.
point. Yeah, or there's no scale. I mean, this no scale is obviously the better, easier way to go about, but I don't, you know.
We do have to look at this differently than what we're doing now, though.
Oh, yeah.
That if there are ways that we must change in order to accommodate an improved facility, that's going to conflict with the way people are used to handling it, they are going to have to get used to the new way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you can't provide, other than leaving it exactly the way it is, you're screwed. You can't make the change. I mean, it's gotta change, and people's behavior is gonna have to change. People are used to coming, I mean, I come over here, sometimes I'm the only one. Sometimes it's 8 wide.
I know,
People are crisscrossing, cutting in front of people, walking in front of moving cars, trucks. All. The miracle and nothing bad has happened that won't get killed.
Well, let's do another excursion and think either scale or no scale when it comes to that building, and, you know, just gotta run some more excursions on it.
Right
Yeah.
now, I don't know, kind of, if you've seen what we have a list of commonly disposed of items in that C and D, and there's by coupon, they're $2 a piece, whether you buy them there or buy them at town hall during the week. And, you know, the guys look, okay, you got 3 kitchen chairs, that's 3, whatever. So they buy the coupons or they turn them in and, you know, it's reconciled eventually, but I mean, by weight, sure, but
Waste.
not easy to do.
It's not easy to do, but the weight isn't huge. It's a circulation problem and it's just a logistic problem.
Yeah.
But I like. the
I
need
can't
for-
visualize a double weight system, you know, that's too complicated.
Sure, I'm glad you're designing it, not me.
So you said.
So we have my, the landfill where I grew up, they had the 2 scales. You came in, you ramp
It's
up,
not perfect.
you hit the
like-
scale, that was your one weight, and then
Coupon
you went
NAS?
to the C and D landfill.
I
That
would like
time
to
it was
have
like
a
just a freaking.
Maybe
pit,
a
right?
better-
You Chucked
I would
everything
like
in,
to see us
and you
have,
hit the next
cast,
scale, and then
you only use your
you
car.
paid.
Yeah, but that's,
And then
that
all it was
wasn't,
to G.
That was a
That's
landfill.
what
that wasn't a loop bag, I was just
That could maybe be in
Scale,
the cord that you
dump.
have for the.
another
Right, something
scale
else.
on the same direction.
Well, because it was only a C and D landfill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there wasn't multiple uses in that, but I mean, that was how I recall when I was growing up, what my experience with scales and going through C and D.
Now, that would be workable if you stayed in one line, you know, kind of progressed in one direction, but if, as soon as you start talking about doubling back and reweighing, that's no good.
So I want to make sure that the circulation is as much to this building, but then when you're done with this building, the majority of people are gonna exit.
Right.
Yeah,
So I want to make sure they're not crisscrossing anybody and they're really getting out.
We'll update it, guys. based on-
See, we go through time, every time we talk about this.
This is good, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Hey, what do you got? Hey, you guys want to get some pizza? What do you want to put on this pizza?
Wait, what kind of
It's like the-
sauce?
it's like the same- Yeah.
I want red sauce.
tell me what
Red
it
sauce.
is. I tell my wife, you order the pizza any way you want. I don't like to get into those.
Robert's like, you know, this work.
No,
You guys tore this thing apart.
No, this is our second version. You did exactly what you had on your board.
Okay.
We came up with another alternate and we'll tweak it again. Alright.
Yeah, some of this just has to do with a little bit of the visibility of the building and, you know, just general orientation. Looking at it from like a road and, you know.
We'll build a berm.
Grades.
Got lots of fill dirt.
Lots and lots. This is good though. It's all been good. Thank you, guys.
We look like,
So you
sell
keep
off 520, big
Right.
berm and that, yeah, oh, great.
The break room that's there, or not the break room, but the restrooms, do you need a break room in addition to the restrooms, or just the restroom?
Just a restroom and a little.
So that's basically
Just
Doesn't
a
matter
place,
what
to- yeah, the weather, you like a little, yeah, the weather, yeah. I won't call it a break room, but, you know,
A place
something
for like a small.
like a
table
10 by
and
10
chairs.
area,
Yeah, okay.
you know, something that's can just give out. a
Heated
little-
or air conditioned?
Maybe, okay, maybe a little bigger, 12 by 12.
So, yeah, so I mean, it'll have, you know, that'll end up.
Well, I don't want to be too comfortable in there, I mean, come on.
Well, a beer cooler would be good.
Do you need any parking down in that, like parking down on that site?